A bird sang this song to me. There was a message in its melody, sweetest lyrics that I ever heard. There's a message in the songs of birds. He said, tomorrow is another day, but living is the only way that tomorrow's gonna ever come. Listen to the words of the song. Everything gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be.
Greetings and welcome to A Sip of Inspiration. I'm Stephanie Wilson-Coleman, the Empowerment Doctor, and I am your host for today's show. Today we're going to talk to one of my favorite people to interview, one of my favorite people who does a great work for the community, and he's just a good guy himself. We're going to actually speak to Anthony Lowery, who's now the Associate Vice President for the Safer Foundation. So we owe him congratulations also. So thank you for joining me today, Anthony. I always appreciate it. Anthony is going to share with us some information about reentry programs, about some of the issues that we see in the community with ex-offenders. And then so we'll talk about some practical tips that we can use and employ as just regular people in the community ourselves in order to help Anthony and others in this great work, because their success will help us be successful, and it takes a team. We'll be right back.
Attention travelers, next Tuesday a major power outage will cause complete chaos throughout the city. Stand clear of the closing doors, please.
Disasters don't plan ahead. You can. Talk to your loved ones about how you're going to be ready in an emergency.
Mom, I got it. What are you doing in there?
I got stuff.
Are you a dog?
I wouldn't do that. Have you seen the pliers? Where'd you find those?
It's not your birthday.
Sorry.
Bye, Grandpa.
Bye, Grandpa.
Take care of yourself.
What are you doing? What are you looking for?
Thank you for calling your GED Pep Talk Center. All right, now, are you ready for your GED Pep Talk?
Being nervous is okay. It just shows that you're serious about getting your diploma.
A lot of things are scary. Heck, I'm scared of clowns.
No quiero oír. Danny, no lo puedo hacer.
DMC, life in your pep talk style.
Just keeping it real, Deb, just keeping it real. Whatever motivation you need, we've got a pep talk for you. Get your GED Pep Talk and find free classes at yourged.org.
Welcome back to A Sip of Inspiration with Stephanie Wilson-Coleman and Anthony Lowery. Thank you again, Anthony. We try to do this regularly so we can make sure that the public knows exactly what's going on and how we can help more than anything. And I think that the importance of our conversation, too, is to help people see ex-offenders and people who are re-entering back into the community as people also, as people who need a second chance, as people who never, as you said, as we said before we started the tape, who never even had a first chance. And I think that that is incredibly important. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. And again, really honored to be here with you, and really want to thank you because you keep a heightened awareness on the issue of reentry, the plight of people with criminal records, the plight of people coming back into our communities, in our homes, and re-engaging with their families. So again, I have to always thank you and be available for this conversation because there's a lot of information that people just don't know.
Yes. Now, I pulled your handy dandy bio. It's incredibly impressive. I says, oh, I should use this as a template for my own bio. But in here, the last time we talked, you were working on programs for housing, for reentry, for offenders who didn't have any place to stay, because all too often they come home from the facility and the criminal record prevents them from getting any affordable housing. And as we've been dutifully informed on social media, it takes a minimum wage of about $21 an hour to even afford housing in the state of Illinois. So let us know what happened with that program and how successful it's been and what else we should be working toward.
Okay, thanks again, Stephanie. And again, now with the new position I've obtained is the Associate Vice President of Community Housing Programs. So not totally focused on housing, but having the experience, understanding the impact. And like you said, when people are returning home from institutions, approximately 15% of them are released into homelessness. You'll see buses come to Pacific Garden Mission and drop a person off who's just returning from prison. So what we try and do at SAFER is, first of all, do a full screen assessment of our people, identify that housing need, so that we can make sure that they have the basic stability of housing. Because if a person doesn't have a stable housing situation, how can they seek employment? How can they move forward? How can they be a parent? So 2 years ago, we worked with St. Leonard's Ministry, Chicago Coalition of the Homeless, Lutheran Social Services, and the Chicago Housing Authority on a reentry pilot program. It was a model program for the country where we were able to secure 50 Section 8 vouchers for our clients who had housing needs. These were our clients who had been exemplary in our programs, had jobs, and we were able to convince the Chicago Housing Authority. And again, I have to always thank the Chief Operating Officer, Gene Jones, for really pushing this project forward. Now we have 35 people with their own voucher, with housing security, so they can work, so they have a real stable housing for their children. What we also do at SAFER is we went into an arrangement, again, with Chicago Housing Authority for project-based vouchers. This is sort of like the Section 8 program, but the voucher stays with the building. We have a 10-unit building in the Austin Community Focus Apartments where we just received funding from Chicago Housing Authority where we can provide additional housing for people with records. Again, I can't highlight enough for housing because, again, at the reentry stage, we want to provide housing, but also you briefly touched on the discrimination that our people face in the private market. A couple of things with people with records, and national studies have shown they earn 40% less than a person without a record, and the discrimination for housing is just tremendous. I get calls all the time from people who, are they going to do a background check? The landlord did a background check. I need a place to stay. So what we try and do, again, to provide the opportunity, but also work on the policies and the administrative discrimination that we see. With Chicago Housing Authority, we were able to change their policy. Before, it was 5 years after completion of sentence. Now it's 3 years after conviction. So people can come out of the door being eligible for housing, being eligible for these housing programs, and that's extremely important.
That is a huge change.
It was tremendous, and it was a long battle, and again, I'd like to thank the Executive Director of Chicago Housing Authority, Gene Jones, who really came into this town, and when he came in, he drove around the community to see the plight, to really see what was happening. Before, we had got pushback. No, we can't do this. What about if we bring people in and they commit a double murder? Gene came in and said, this is what we have to do. We have to make sure people have an opportunity for stable, subsidized housing.
So it seems that our mindset, people who don't have a record, like you said, what if they create a double murder?
Right.
People are committing double murders all the time, and many of them are first-time offenders.
Yes.
Because double murders are generally crimes of passion and not necessarily crimes of opportunity. So we need to shift our mindset too. Having been homeless, I do know that it's difficult to think when you don't know where you're going to sleep. That consumes your every thought all day long. So there's no way with a criminal record that you can advance.
It's extreme. It's the biggest challenge that people face. And again, we work with advocacy organizations, Chicago Alliance for Fair Housing, trying to do a human rights ordinance with Cook County, trying to really drill down into the discrimination. Being a Section 8 landlord, I know that landlords will discriminate because of the fear they have of the record. unless you've had a personal experience of someone with a record, it's taboo to you. Because again, what we've seen and what society has done is that when you think about records, you don't see the human being. Right. You don't see the humanity in that person. You don't see this is a parent who needs stable housing for their children. So what we try and do is Safer is to do comprehensive services that address the employment and the educational aspects, but we know how critically important that housing is. We have a 3-year plan to incorporate different levels of housing, which emergency housing, transitional, and private rate market housing, so that people can come in, they can obtain a subsidy, and they can get some stable housing, because we know that if a person can't get a safe place to stay, they can usually be successful, and our recidivism rates show that.
And also, I think that a lot of us think that, oh, they can just go back home to their family. Yeah. And that's not always the case, because a lot of times their family are insecure when it comes to not only housing, but food, because their families are not in an income level that could have provided all of the things that they needed in order to sort of, I guess, circumvent the behavior that was coming.
The biggest thing when people enter in the system is that the majority of them were living in poverty at the time of arrest. And you mentioned it, a big thing that we did along with that CHA program was created a pathway for return to family. So again, and with federal subsidized housing, it was taboo. One strike, you're out. If you had a record, you can never come back in. Now there's a pathway. If a person is in a Safer Foundation program and they have an exemplary record of accomplishment, they can petition to move back in with family in public housing and in Section 8 households, which was big. So again, if there's a relationship, father having children in the household, now there's an opportunity. If he's in a program of rehabilitation, he can move back in and be the father that we need for him to be.
Right, especially to be the father to the children, and support even to the mother. Because it takes all of us in order to make families work.
And the biggest thing, and what we see in the community is that most of our young people, that's why I talked about, never had a first chance, because they've never had the opportunity to see success. You have families where the father has a criminal record, the mother has a criminal record. They see frustration, denial, rejection every day. There may be extended family who've been in the system. So success to them is, I have to go out here and do something for myself. And usually when they do something for themselves, the end result is a criminal record. So again, what we have to do and what we try and do in our programs at Safer is create ambassadors, like with our healthcare initiative. I was blessed to go to Washington, D.C. a couple years ago and testify in a program with Attorney General Holder. And in testifying in that program, I did some research and saw it was 20 million healthcare jobs in this country. And I remember getting a call about the blanket barrier that healthcare had when hiring people with records. So when I testified in Washington, it opened up an opportunity to bring in Johns Hopkins Hospital to Chicago, leading hospital in this country for the last 22 years. Helped us develop a pilot program to where the last 2 years we've gotten over 150 people hired in hospitals with the hospital knowing they have a criminal record. These are living wage jobs. These are career pathway jobs.
Career pathway jobs.
And that's the biggest opportunity. Now we have our own construction company. We have a young man who started out in our program making $14 an hour. Now he's making $39 an hour on the red line construction. These are career pathways that send a signal of hope into the communities. Because when the guys on the corner remember Johnny was out here with them 2 years ago, now Johnny has a new car, a hard hat, and is doing fine. That gives them hope that we can put down the gun and pick up the hard hat.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned Johns Hopkins now has a presence in the reentry of ex-offenders. So have the other big players in Illinois stepped up?
It is
University of Chicago, Rush Medical Center, Northwestern.
We're bringing them around. We're having conversations with all of them. We have couple opportunities at Rush. We're really trying to challenge the University of Chicago to come on board, because again, when you look at the University of Chicago and the analogy that I use, they have 67 Nobel laureates come out to the University of Chicago, greatest minds in the world. They're sitting on an endowment of about 50 to 100 billion. They're killing people 2 blocks away. How do you see that happening and don't think, with the greatest minds in the world, what can I do to help? So we're challenging and having conversations with them to come on board. Presence Hospital Network has been tremendous. Advocate Hospital Network has been tremendous because, again, they're starting to see the need of the community and wanting to provide that real-time opportunity for people.
I'm a University of Chicago graduate, so maybe I can help facilitate that
Yes,
conversation.
thank you.
And as we were told, if we write 66 Nobel laureates, which if you just looked at the number of Nobel laureates, we would be the leading country. Because we have more from the University of Chicago than anywhere else. So there are some great minds there, and they do need to help tackle that problem. So
yeah, definitely.
when I write my little yearly check, I'll
Thank
be
you.
sure
Thank
that
you.
they understand that that's what they need to do. So what's your day-to-day like when you're dealing with the housing programs and any of the reentry programs just in jobs? What's your day-to-day like?
Well, day to day, and now what is happening with, and I previously talked about the CHA relationship, we also have a Chicago Housing Authority Section 8 Transitional Jobs Program. And this is a program because I used to work in public housing communities. They brought me back in to manage this project where we provide a transitional employment opportunity, getting people back into the workplace or starting with training and also with subsidies. Through this program, we will pay the employer. We will pay for the first 160 hours of wages to take that financial strain off of the employer so they can look at a person who's a great fit for them. That's primary responsibility. I still dibble into the policy because I was director of policy for 10 years. So the legislative side, the housing policy side, the discrimination, the ban the box, and all the things that impact people with records, because my passion with that is because I'm a person with a record. I've been discriminated against in spite of education, career advancement, or everything. The criminal record superseded everything. I've been blessed. I was lucky. When I had a shot, I took advantage of the opportunity. Most of the people don't have a shot. So again, opening up opportunities for occupational licensing, insurance, real estate, and then also the housing. And I'm probably the person who mans the call line at Safer. So, because I get calls from all over the country, and try and guide people and direct them and give them the resources that they need. A big thing that we're seeing that a lot of people still don't know about is the expansion of ceiling in the state of Illinois. Last year we hosted Governor Rauner, and he signed into law the greatest expansion of ceiling eligibility in the history of the United States. Now just about every felony conviction can be sealed. With a 3-year wait period after conviction, but if there's educational attainment or career advancement while on parole, you eliminate the 3-year wait period.
Okay, we need to talk about that. That is really critical.
Yeah, that's
that
tremendous.
And ban the box, we need to get really deep on that.
Yeah, that's
right.
tremendous.
We're going to take a quick break right now, but stay tuned because this ban the box and this ceiling, the changes in the ceiling, that's huge, and I don't want you to miss it. We'll be right back.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, we mobbing. Come on, girl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl.
Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys are much too much. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We're going to beat them and bust them.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y.
Take time to be a dad today. Call or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Dummy, you're pathetic.
You little brat.
Child abuse is also known by some other words.
Jerk.
You moron.
You're so clumsy.
Words like these can hit as hard as a fist.
You were never born. I hate you.
What you say to your children can determine how they feel about
You
themselves
slob. You're worthless.
and how they feel about you. Get the picture. Stop using words that hurt. Start using words that help. For helpful information, contact us.
Welcome back to A Sip of Inspiration. I'm Stephanie Wilson-Coleman, the Empowerment Doctor, and we are here with Anthony Lowery today, who is Associate Vice President of the Safer Foundation. Anthony, before we went to break, we were talking about the changes in the laws about sealing records, and I think we need to do a little bit more education on ban the box, because I still hear from people who say, you know, I can't apply because they're going to ask me about my record and I don't know how to handle it. So let's talk about those. So let's start with the sealing. That is like huge.
Yes, again, Stephanie, sealing in Illinois, you have the greatest opportunity to seal a record of anywhere in the United States. And I'm going to separate and let people know what sealing and expungement is. Expungement is an arrest that did not lead to conviction. You were arrested, it was dismissed. It was SOL, you were acquitted, it was thrown out. You still have a record that must be expunged. Sealing is for convictions, misdemeanors, and felonies. Before this new law was signed in, there are 1,121 criminal justice statutes in the state of Illinois that you can be convicted of. That's why most prosecutors just charge you with everything, because they know something's going to stick. With sealing, you can eliminate just about every conviction except 4. The 4 that you can seal are domestic battery, orders of protection, animal crimes, DUIs, and the other one, DUIs and associated and reckless driving. Anything other than that, you are able to seal your record 3 years after you complete sentence. Critically important. When a record is sealed and an employer does a name background check, they will not see the record. Now, employers in healthcare, banking, schools, school bus drivers, hospitals, and state agencies can still see a sealed record because they do a fingerprint background check. When an employer does a name background check, they will not be able to see that record. So anybody watching this show, or you have relatives who have been impacted by the criminal justice system, please encourage them to get their record sealed. We have pro bono attorneys, which means it's free, at Cabrini Green Legal Aid, who can help you, walk you through the process. In previous years, only about 11,000 people would get their record sealed each year in Illinois. The first year after the new law signed, 65,000 people have gotten their record sealed. And the lines for the free help is just amazing, because now people see the opportunity where they can get a job. So if someone does a name background check, they shouldn't see the record. So again, sealing is critically important. If you've been impacted, make sure you can get your record sealed. And if you need additional information, you can always give me a call, 773-826-6310. And again, that's 773-826-6310.
Now that's for convictions that occurred in the state of Illinois.
In the state of Illinois, yeah.
Okay.
And I also have a resource, Stephanie, for convictions outside of Illinois. So if anybody's been convicted outside of Illinois, just give me a call and I can direct you and send you the information of that state. Because sealings are state laws. We talked about, Danny Davis had a bill as far as at the federal level trying to do some type of sealing or expungement. But again, when you try and work with the conservatives and get something passed on criminal justice reform, nothing will happen. We see now a lot of the work that President Obama did is being flipped around, pulled out with the Department of Justice by the new administration. Now, ban the box.
Yes, people have a lot of questions about ban the box, and they don't know, you know, if should it show up, if it shows up, how do they respond? It's really confusing to some people.
Now, what ban the box does, and we started ban the box, we started the first ban the box about 10 years ago. Finally got ban the box passed in the state of Illinois in 2015, I think. What ban the box does is remove the question of criminal conviction off the initial application for employment. So you're applying for a job. In the state of Illinois, the law is that the employer must have 15 or more employees, trying to protect small businesses from going through the strain of excessive background checks. In the city of Chicago, no employer should have a question of criminal conviction in the city of Chicago. So you have a state law outside of Chicago, must be 15 or more employees. In the city of Chicago, no employer should have a question about criminal conviction. If you see a question of criminal conviction, that employer is violating the law. City of Chicago Commission on Human Relations is the resource that protects the ordinance with fines and warnings to employers. If you see a question on the application for employment in Chicago, please call in. City of Chicago Commission on Human Relations, I don't have their number, but you can just do a quick search, and they have people willing and ready to do the enforcement. Outside the City of Chicago is the State of Illinois Department of Labor. But again, what we have to do, if you see a question of criminal conviction on any application, that has to spark your interest. Something is wrong. You can call me. I will, again, direct you to City of Chicago Human Relations and the State of Illinois Department of Labor. Because what Ban the Box does is to protect you so your skills, education, and experience can be looked at before they do a background check. Now, with Ban the Box, they're going to do a background check. But again, it provides them the opportunity to see you as a human being first.
As human being first. Mm-hmm. And when you see if there are applications that you see them on, I've advised people, you don't have to bring it to that employer's attention. Mm-hmm. I would take the application with me. Yeah. And then contact the people, contact the city, and let them, so they can see the application. Yeah. Yeah. And they will do the heavy lifting.
Definitely.
They will go out there and make sure that those applications are updated. So the employer doesn't have to be the wiser, because sometimes employers don't realize that they can't do that.
Right.
Go ahead.
And a lot of them, if they're a larger corporation with general counsels, they know the law.
Right.
Some smaller shops may not know the law, but again, some of the larger corporations, after they know they can't put the question on the initial application, they'll slide a criminal records questionnaire after the application, because the law in Illinois says if a person is eligible for employment, then you can do a background check. So they have a loose definition of eligibility. If you've done the application, you're technically eligible. So again, when you see situations like that, again, great advice, Stephanie, take the application, take the questionnaire, bring it, we will call, we will help you, we will walk you through, because again, unless people with records can get jobs, you have approximately 1 million people in Chicago who have some type of arrest or conviction record. Reentry is the biggest issue in our city because, again, the lack of education, the violence, the opportunity, economic development stems from the opportunity to get people with records back to work. So, again, when you're being denied an opportunity to work, you're being denied an opportunity to live somewhere because of your record, please give us a call. I will direct you to the right resources. Again, that's 773-826-6310.
And he's serious about that. Please give him a call because Safer Foundation specializes in this, and they have attorneys guiding them. They have knowledgeable people on staff. So at what point does the offender contact Safer House in his journey back to reentry?
Well, what we like for a person to do, and then again, Stephanie, I go into prisons too. I'll go into prisons and talk to guys before they get out. Because again, when I go down to Dixon, when I go to Pontiac, when I go to Sheridan, and I talk to guys, and I coined a phrase a few years ago when I started this work, that fresh air causes amnesia. Because I know that when a person gets out, the world has changed. All the commitments you had inside the institution, the vapors start eroding your memory of how you were hurt, how people didn't support you. So when I go in, I tell guys, I share my journey with them, but I also let them know that you have to make a commitment to stay free. I can talk to you about legislative analysis, collateral consequences. I'm looked at as the foremost expert in the country. But the commitment that I had to make every day was to make a commitment to stay free. When we get people in our work release centers, we operate 2 work release centers for the Department of Corrections. So those people are technically still in custody, but they get substance abuse education. They're actually working. We have guys in the institution making $18, $20 an hour. So before they even get out, they have a good job. And plus they have money saved because you can only spend a certain amount of your money. You have guys paroling with $15,000, $20,000. We had a guy who was a finance manager at a car dealership. When he left the facility, he had over $100,000 saved. So, but the average person will come to us maybe 6 months after they've been out, because they'll get out, they'll think they can get a job, they'll run into the roadblocks, and then understand they need some help. So then they'll come to us. We try and get people, I tell people first day, Soon as you get out, you're already on vacation. Come on out, get some help. We have construction, we have healthcare, we have logistics, we have robotics. We had another young man who finished our robotics program. He's making $80,000 a year with a company in North Carolina. They actually paid $25,000 for him to relocate his family. So we look at the industries with the greatest needs: solar energy, clean jobs. Because if you get in on the front end, you don't face the discrimination. When the need of the employer is greater than the discrimination, we have opportunities.
Exactly. Yeah. And especially in those industries.
Yes.
As healthcare is ballooning now, and so is the robotics industry.
Right.
They need people who have skills.
They look at the skills, and I didn't realize healthcare, like I said, when I first was going to D.C. and I'm doing a little research for my testimony, and I saw it was 20 million jobs in health. I'm like, 20 million? And we can't get one? So come on. And so, no, those are the industries that we look at. Construction. We partner with large construction companies. We have our own construction company where we do work, we do rehab, we do maintenance, we do snow removal, we do anything we can to get people back into the workforce with a real job where they can take care of themselves.
There's 20 million? We only have 1 million people who need jobs. You got 20 million jobs over there. What are you talking about? That's right. So when they contact you and they become part of your program, so what's their day like? I know a lot of ex-offenders, they fear what they don't know. They know the streets because they see it all the time, so they don't know enough that they should fear that. So they fear what they don't know, and everybody fears change, not just ex-offenders. Regular people fear change. And if you think you don't fear change, ask yourself why you're still in that job you hate, okay? Now.
What we do when we bring a person in, Stephanie, is do a full assessment. And what we're doing in the coming year, 2019, we're really changing our process. Because before a person would come in, we would put them in a week-long job readiness, soft skills training, resume prep, workplace environment, conflict resolution, any educational support they needed. Then we would bring them back in for another 2 weeks with additional support. They may need more interview question challenges and things like that to get them prepared for the interview. But now, coming in 2019, we're looking at that because we're doing more evidence-based practices. We're trying to identify cognitive behaviors or cognitive delays. But we're also trying to take a look at people who have work experience. Instead of a 5-day training, you may need 1 day. You may just need to update your resume. You may need to do some soft skills. So now we have a variety of opportunities where we can fast-track people into the workplace. Because when people come, they want to work. But again, we have to make sure we have the skills and the opportunity, that the skills match the opportunity, because we have over 200 employers that we work with because they know we're going to get them highly skilled, motivated, committed, drug-free people to come to work. So that's why next year will be the 47th year of Safer Foundation. And the relationship that we have is to get people ready to work. We hang our hat on employment, but when we look at the communities in which most of our clients come from, and they're the same communities you see on the news every day: Inglewood, Austin, East and West Garfield Park, Auburn, Gresham, where we see this explosion of violence, lack of education, lack of opportunity. So what we try and do is train ambassadors of hope. Because if a person can come, get restarted, get a real job, stand up for their family, come back to their community, they can be a vision of hope for others. So we get people well trained, get them to work, but I think the biggest thing is opening up the opportunities in what we call our Safer Demand Skills Collaborative with healthcare, robotics, logistics, transportation, and things of that nature where they can get a real dollar. So when their friends say, well, come on, man, all you got to do is sit in the car. No, I'm going to fix my lunch. I got to go to work tomorrow. So, again, we can take away, we can strengthen them and get them to see that opportunity.
Right. And now they're at a point where they're thinking about, no, I'm going to give up not only the good pay, but the health insurance, the vacation, sick leave, and the ability to take care of my family. So all of a sudden, the odds are much greater than, well, everybody at home's getting high, so I got to do something for myself.
Yeah, in recidivism, and what we see, the biggest reduction in recidivism is employment and education. If you can get a person retrained, educated, if a person gets a college degree, their recidivism is less than 5%.
Oh, that's fantastic. On that note, we're going to take a quick break, and we do want to come back and talk some more about recidivism, because there is still that belief in our society that once you are convicted or offender, that you're always going to be, and that's not necessarily the case. That's almost saying, like, once you have some disease, or you're always going to have it, and that's not the case. Everything can be treatable. So we'll be right back.
Hey, can you chop the pineapple?
Chop the pineapple.
Nope, I'm high. How about I wash off the grapes?
Yes.
Okay.
You're already making good decisions when you're high.
I want tacos. Will you drive? I'm a little toasty.
Nope, I'm high. Let's order in.
Don't make an exception when it comes to driving. If you feel different, you drive different.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
How do you really help people successfully reintegrate back into normal society? Which means that you've got to have resources, you've got to have programs, you've got to have people who understand what the problems are. And then you've got to try and convince communities to open up and accept these individuals as a part of normal life.
Just to have an opportunity for the Safer Foundation to hire people that's been in prison, because the organization is basically to help people in prison. So to do that was a great opportunity for me.
To come to Safer and to get the counseling that I did allowed me to show my son a different side of me. I'm grateful to Safer to help steer me into the right direction.
Welcome back to A Sip of Inspiration. I'm Stephanie Wilson-Coleman, the Empowerment Doctor, and I'm here with Anthony Lowery. And we want to thank you for joining our conversation regarding the Safer Foundation and all of the great things that are happening to help ex-offenders come back into the community and be actually great citizens. That's actually the job that we have to do. Everybody does something, and not everybody who has committed a crime has been arrested and convicted, which is another thing that we need to remember too. And not everyone goes back to prison. We were talking about recidivism rates, and you guys have great experience with reducing the recidivism rates.
Well, and it's important because, again, when you're evaluating your program and you're really showing the viability of your program, you have to show that it works. The standard of showing that it works for people with criminal records is a reduction in recidivism.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at recidivism in the state of Illinois, and it's come down the last few years, it used to be 47%, I think it's 44 now. But if you get a person, you bring them into our program, they get the training, then they get the job start, they stay on the job 30 days, recidivism drops to 22%. If they stay on the job 365 days, recidivism drops to 13%. So instead of having 1 out of every 2 people go back to prison, you actually have 1 out of 10 go back. So employment is the most direct link to reduce recidivism. We've been really honored by the work we've done. Our president, Victor Dixon, was just appointed to Governor-elect J.B. Pritzker's transition team on reentry. We try and put this issue to the forefront because we know the impact on families. We think about the individual, but the impact on families is critically important. Because again, when you steal hope away from children, where do you think they're going to go? A couple months ago, I did a panel at UIC for the 50th anniversary of the Kerner Commission report. And the Kerner Commission report happened in 1968 after the riots in Newark, after the riots in Watts. The federal government wanted to take a look at what was going on. Why are we having these riots? It was before the riot, after Dr. King got killed, before the riot in Chicago in 1968. So in doing this panel, I did some research and looked back on the primary issues that the Kerner Commission came up with, because it was the issues that they came up with regarding racism, lack of opportunity, lack of education, are the same issues that we have 50 years later. And and they had the remaining member senator from Arizona, who was the last surviving member of the Kerner Commission, who was still alive, came talk. Timio Black, who just celebrated his 100th birthday, was there. And when I talked about the issues that our people face, and I said when King got killed in 1968, the West Side went up in flames. In the last 50 years, you got some spots where a blade of grass has not been planted. How do you expect people to grow and see an opportunity if you don't give them the economic support? The discrimination has been intentional in this country. The economic development has to be intentional to rebuild these communities, because again, we had a plan and tried to pass legislation to put training hubs in the 10 communities of highest reentry, Inglewood, Austin, Roseland, where what we're doing now with construction, healthcare, we can actually train people in their community and get them those opportunities. But again, the previous administration talked about reducing prison population by 25% in the next 10 years. That hasn't happened, because again, you have sentencing guidelines that have to be revisited. Right. You have all the things with criminal justice reform, because in Illinois, prison pays. When I go down to Menard, the biggest employer in Menard, Illinois, is Illinois Department of Corrections. These are state jobs, union jobs, Pontiac, Danville. This is the economic engine in these communities. So when we talk about reducing recidivism, that means that, okay, they're going to stop people coming to prison. If they stop people coming to prison, they may close our prison. Governor Quinn closed 2 prisons about 4 years ago, Tams and Dwight, and that sent shockwaves through the state of Illinois.
That's sent shockwaves.
And that sent shockwaves. The mayor of Dwight said it was a $60 million negative economic impact. So again, when we're trying to get justice and opportunity for our people, it's a big fight, because you have to look at the legislation, but you have to look at the economic development and the opportunity that we try and instill.
So the problem is even bigger than the ex-offender problem.
Yeah.
I mean, there was just a report that was released that's proved that they purposely devalued the property in African-American communities. Yeah. So you wonder why we don't have some of the large chains, why we only have the fast food that's killing us and giving us high blood pressure and diabetes, because the value of the property. And that was intentional. So it's like the entire United States needs to look at things like, where are the job markets now? Because you're limiting even the economic wealth and health of a family who is actually employed by a prison. Because the money is in robotics and healthcare. We know where they're, and solar. That's where the money is now. And that's where the big paying jobs now. And those employers are steady saying, we need more people, we need more people. So that whole job market needs to be addressed by everyone, not just you guys pushing it. Everyone needs to look at that.
Well, the federal government has to take the lead, hopefully with this administration, and with their lack of understanding and lack of compassion for the reentry community, I don't know if we'll see that happening. There are 1.2 million jobs in clean energy. We had 150 people over at our office Thursday for the solar training for solar jobs.
1.2 million jobs
1.2 million
in
clean energy. And we're trying to get people engaged, get them on the front end, because again, if we're in on the front end, we eliminate or diminish the discrimination. And so when you look at what a Marshall Plan, and the Marshall Plan was after the war, they helped rebuild the communities. Well, after the war on drugs in our communities, we need the same help with rebuilding and providing economic opportunities, providing training, providing opportunities, providing stores, providing markets, providing the opportunity for our people, because again, this discrimination has been intentional. 2019 marks the 400th year of slavery in this country. And again, what we're seeing is still the racial divide, the negative impact and the discrimination of people of color. And so what we have to do is, again, and I always challenge people, look at the humanity. We want the same thing for our kids that you want for yours. Why do you feel if we get an opportunity, we're stealing something from you? So again, that's the biggest challenge, and that was some of the message that I did at UIC, as far as, especially when the rhetoric is so intense as it is now, that if I'm successful, I'm not stealing from you.
Right.
I work hard for mine, as you work hard for you. I want success for you also. But we see discrimination and racism fulfilled in the criminal justice system.
And I mean, and the prosperity job market doors are open. Right. 20 million jobs in healthcare, 1.2 million in clean energy. I mean, so it's like no one needs to feel that you're taking anything from them, because there's these great jobs that these people don't know how they're going to feel.
Right. And that's why we've had success.
Right.
Because again, when we opened up the hospital initiative, I went across the country. I went to Ohio talking to hospital executives, Oakland, California, Dallas. The lady in Dallas said that out of all the graduates, out of all the medical schools in Texas, we still do not have enough people to fit the need. So they're looking at people with criminal records as a viable opportunity to get training, to do the things. That's why Johns Hopkins partnered with us. I went around the country with Hopkins. They were part of our team. And looking at the great thing that Hopkins does is that Hopkins has been hiring people with records for 15 years. Hopkins will bring a person in as a CNA and pay for them to be a nurse up front, not a tuition reimbursement.
Oh,
They'll pay. Another thing Hopkins does, if you have a contract with Hopkins, you must hire from the East Baltimore community where Hopkins is located, or you can't even get a contract with Hopkins. So University of Chicago, Rush, Northwestern.
I'm going to put the pressure on University of Chicago now.
So if you want to help rebuild our communities, there's an opportunity, there's a model. Johns Hopkins has been doing it, leading hospital in the country. Because again, when we brought Hopkins in, all the hospitals in Chicago, what is Hopkins doing here? What are they doing? What's going on? And they all came in, and Hopkins really opened the door for us.
Fantastic. So I noticed that there's a new war on drugs. So it was when the drugs were primarily concentrated in the African American communities, or just the minority communities, because people of color, period, were having problems, and we went through it, and our communities were gutted, and it was a crime, and the answer was prison or commercials that made you afraid of every black man that ever moved. And these were commercials that used black people who weren't even criminals, they were just actors, but we bought it. But now that it seems that the drugs have infiltrated white neighborhoods now. Now it's a problem, and I see more and more commercials about rehab and treatment, and there is help. Where was that message when it comes to people of color?
No, I always say, when I'm teaching about the criminal justice system to our clients as they come in, and I'll always try and give them the backdrop of racism being American as apple pie, and discrimination etched in the DNA of every American institution, and the changing face of addiction, as you just talked about.
I love that, the changing face of addiction.
That's
a polite statement.
And
I'm going to coin that, okay?
And as you see that changing face, last year in this country, 61,000 young, primarily white people overdosed and died. So there were 61,000 deaths. In the state of Ohio, there were over 4,000 deaths in 1 year. Small towns had to rent refrigerated trailers to keep the bodies in. But there is a misnomer about that. Kathy Kane Willis at the Chicago Urban League came up with a great report showing that in Cook County, 70% of the overdose deaths are African American. So again, what they try and do is, with the changing face, direct the dollars to Naperville, to the other towns, and not
to Wheaton, to all the other towns. Right, that's where they want the money to go.
And not have the treatment opportunities here for our people. So she has a great book, and I'll make sure you get a copy of it.
I get a copy of that.
And it really talks about the issue in Cook County as far as the misnomer, the mispress, and this is still ravaging African American communities. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I tell you, it's like you see those commercials, you say, "What? Wait a minute." So there's no longer an addiction problem in our neighborhood.
No, treatment everywhere.
That's right. Could we just, it's treatment everywhere. Right. It's just treatment everywhere. Right. And so I said, but there seems to be a lack still of treatment and education. Yeah. So we talked a little bit earlier, getting back to that, some of the offenders never had a first chance. So we call it a second chance, but they didn't have a first chance. Yeah. So what can everyday people do to help with that problem? Because it does take a village. You can't do it by yourself. Safer Foundation can't save the world. You're going to need neighbors and people like me to help you. So what is it we can do to help?
I think the biggest thing is recognizing. There was a national report that came out saying that half of the 113 million adults in the United States have a relative who's been engaged, involved, or incarcerated. In Illinois, it's 4.1 million people. So with Cook County having a third of the state's population, there's over 1 million people. People don't recognize the need until the personal impact, until the grandson, their child, has been impacted in the system, and then it's horrible. So what we try and do is get people to really understand the issue, talk about the issue. I do the Illinois League of Women Voters with the white women from the suburbs. They're committed. But give time, volunteering, but give dollars for unrestricted support for organizations like Safer Foundation, where we can provide additional transportation. We can help our clients with their daycare needs. We can make sure that all those things are being done. And our website is www.saferfoundation.org. Your executive producer just came in and told me it was a great site. I said, okay, great, I'll make sure they know that. But again, St. Leonard's, Safer Foundation, people are on the ground doing the work. Make sure they have the resources, because again, we try and rebuild our communities one person, one job at a time. If we can have that opportunity, we can see a change. Our communities are being ravaged by violence because of the lack of opportunity. Encourage your elected officials. We have a new opportunity again with Governor-elect Pritzker coming in and our president being on that transition team to keep this issue in the forefront. Now we're meeting with mayoral candidates to get them to try and open up an office of reentry in the city of Chicago that's totally focused on these issues of employment and opportunity for people. And again, we have to see the humanity in the people that have been impacted by the criminal justice system. Because again, we hear about the sensationalism, the ravaged crime that can happen on Pluto, and it impacts our perspective of should we help somebody here. I see the people when I'm downtown move to the side when they see a black man, because we hear about all of the violence that the young people are doing. Now, we thought it was a problem contained in Inglewood. Now it's in Wicker Park. Now it's in Wrigleyville. But if you give and support the opportunity to provide services to these communities, that is the best way to stop this ravage and pillage of violence that we're seeing.
And also, if you, a lot of us own businesses and own small businesses. I'd like to encourage you to give that ex-offender an opportunity. And if you're a little worried about the ex-offender, partner with the Safer Foundation. They can help you. They can send you qualified people, because they do have a lot of people they work with, but remember, the numbers are large and they're getting bigger. So we need to do all that we can do in our community. And I would also go as far as to say, being arrested, I think it was Johnny Cochran that said that you could guarantee that you will never commit a crime, but you cannot guarantee that you will never be arrested of a crime. And it's that arrest, and there are two things that I don't think that you have enough money saved for. One is a criminal battle, and the other one is a serious health challenge. So you need to be aware of that, and you need to know what your rights are. And as aunts and grandparents, we don't reach down to the young ones and talk to them and help them with that first opportunity. We've got to start doing that again. Community is important.
That's extremely important, Stephanie, because what I did when my son was in high school, I got on the local school council. I go into schools. I go into alternative schools, young schools. When I was in public housing, I would do drug prevention and choices classes for first graders, because the first grader in Robert Taylor had a different experience than the first grader in Wilmette. So again, the first grader in Robert Taylor could tell me about guns, crack rocks, and things like that. So I had to open up a venue and an opportunity for them to talk about their issues. And again, it's very important to reach back, get our young people. They need to see somebody who is successful. They need to have some hope. They need to have an opportunity, because these conversations are not happening in the household. So we need to step in, volunteer at the YMCA, volunteer at schools, to just come in and talk about, just do a reading club in the school or something, so they can see some level of success. And again, I would be remiss, Stephanie, I'm going to jump back to the housing. CHA project-based voucher wait list opened up on December 12th.
I'm making a note, okay.
www.thecha.org, project-based wait list. We eliminated the 5-year wait period, so people with records have an opportunity to get housing through project-based providers. So again, extremely important.
That is extremely important. And so I've written that down, and I'll make sure that I put that in some of my closing notes and share it with people too, because that is extremely important. Well, we are about out of time. As always, it is a great conversation, and it's one that I think that we need to have more than once a year too. So, because the problem there, I mean, you all are making great strides, but we need to continue to make great strides. We need to continue to have the awareness on there and continue to encourage people to do what they can do, because people don't understand just how important, just like you said, volunteering at a school to lead a reading group. Children, I mean, it's a proven fact that by the time kids are 6 years old, a child is doing extremely well in school versus one that's not, has heard the difference of about 30 million words. So the only way they're going to hear more words is if you start that reading club and read to them and have them read so they can hear more words. You'd be surprised how powerful words are, because they cause the mind to start thinking about things, and how powerful stories are, because people then have something else to think about other than what they see on the street corner, other than that rock, other than that gun, and other than Pookie or whoever is causing havoc in the community. So with that being said, I want to thank you again. And to the audience, I want to thank you for listening and to this show and being a part of it. And I'm going to encourage you and challenge you to go out and do something into that community. In the meantime, do not go gently into that good night. I want you to find a heel worth dying for and take it. Be the person that you've been waiting for, and make today so awesome that yesterday gets jealous. And above all else, I want you to believe in yourself and do it your way. I'm Stephanie Wilson-Coleman, the Empowerment Doctor. This is a Sip of Inspiration, and it has been a blast. You guys have a great day.
Life's too short to drink cheap champagne, so I decided to buy me a better brand to taste with my strawberry